everyone, I'm Allie. Join me in creating this pearl matrix pendant necklace. There's a couple modifications that you can do, so make sure you watch until the end to see all of your options. Remember, if you do need any supplies, go ahead and look below the video in the description to shop with us online. Gather up your materials and let's get started. So to begin our pearl matrix pendant portion, we are going to be using some size 6 green dragon thread, and I have a size 10 needle on about 5 feet of thread. I'm going to begin with the center of the design. Now this design is reversible if you so choose that you want to have it on the other side. I like that you can see the pearls more on this side and have that matrix look and design. We're going to begin with one of our 6mm pearls, and I'm using Potomac Pearls both in Comet here, in the 4 and the 6mm. I also have 2 colors of 11O seed beads, the Duracoat Galvanized Silver, and then the Silver Line Sapphire AB, both in the Miyuki brand. I'm going to take my thread and needle through the pearl, and I'm going to let it hang out towards the bottom and just hold on to it. From here, I am going to begin with my center row, which is going to be my silver, and I'm going to take my 11O seed bead and put it through the pearl, so that way it just kind of hangs out on that side. I'm going to mimic that and go through the pearl one more time to the other side. That's going to get those beads kind of stabilized on the outside and in the center of the design. From here, I'm going to go through the 11O, the first one more time, back over to the other side. And then what we're going to do is tie that thread end to the thread that we're currently working on. So just tying those 2 thread ends together, and that's going to keep our thread from shifting or moving at all. All right. Now what I want to do is take my thread through the 11O seed bead on this side here. We're going to add 7 more seed beads that are going to wrap around our 6mm bead. So we're going to add 7 to this side. And then once we have those 7 on, we're going to go to the 11O on the opposite side of the 6mm bead and take our needle and thread through. You can see that kind of hugs around the bead. On this side, we're going to do the exact same thing. For a total of 7, it's going to give you 14 plus those 2 that you started with is 16 total. So you're going to end up with 16 beads that are nestling our 6mm pearl. I'm going to sew back through those original 7. Back through the middle bead from the beginning. And then I'm going to go through bead number 1 in the second set of 7 that we added. It honestly doesn't matter where you're coming out here. You just want to make sure that you are not seeing a lot of extra thread that's pulling. From here, I'm going to begin my peyote stitch. My peyote stitch is going to be peaks of my silver beads. Between each bead, I'm going to put 3 more beads. So there's 1, 2, 3 beads. Skip over the next bead in line and sew through bead number 3. This is going to continue the whole way around the piece. Because I have 16 beads on, we're going to do this 8 times. Going in, adding 3 beads, skipping over the next bead, which is bead number 4, and sewing into bead number 5. Once again, 3 beads, sewing over 6, and sewing through number 7. So I'm going to continue the whole way around till I have 8 of these little triangle points the whole way around the center of my 6mm bead. At this point, I'm adding my last 3 beads in, and I wanted to show how cool of an earring this is if you want to make one to wear with this set. I'm going to go back through the first bead that my thread was coming out of when I did my first point. So going in there after I add these last 3, kind of pushing that open, sewing my needle through that first seed bead, and that completes my little points of 3. So see how you have that kind of nice star design. From here, we are going to add pearls. Now, where are we going to add pearls? I'm going to sew through bead number 2, and I'm going to exit bead number 3, because currently our thread is coming out or in bead number 1 that we started the rotation with. Those odd beads that are not part of that peak, those beads that are in between, so you have a bead that sits in the middle that's going to sit directly under the peak. The other bead, the beads that our thread were coming out of when we went and did that peyote stitch, is where we're going to add in our pearls. So how are we adding them in? We are going to add in one 11-0 seed bead. I'm doing my alternate color, one 4mm bead, and one more 11-0. This 11-0, the second one, I'm adding in my silver color. I'm currently coming out of bead number 3, and I'm going to sew back into bead number 3 from the opposite side. So the thread is progressing to the left. I add my beads here, and I'm going to sew back into the right. To get the pearl to sit correctly, I'm going to go back through the pearl and the blue seed bead, not through the silver one that sits after the pearl. That's going to allow that to sit correctly. And then once again, go back into that bead that your thread is coming out of and sew through the opposite direction. What that's going to do is have that pearl sit right on top of that individual seed bead. I'm going to sew over 2 beads of that original row of 7 from the middle. And then once I come out, we're going to repeat this. So because again, we did 8 peaks, we're also going to do 8 seed beads. So alternate color 11-0 goes on, then our 4mm bead, then our 1 silver 11. Let that drop down next to your center of your design. Skip over the 11-0 seed bead. So back through the pearl, back through the 11-0, and you're going into the opposite side of that seed bead there that your thread is coming out of. And pull that nice and tight. So you see I have 2 on there. It's going to look like the peaks sit a tiny bit behind these seed beads. Once you're done there, sew over 2 more beads of that original row. Come out the bead that sits between the peaks and go ahead and add your next pearl on. So total, we're going to do this 8 times. I have 2 done and I have 6 more to go. So as you add in your last pearl here, you're also going to sew back through the bead your thread is currently coming out of through the opposite side, the next bead that's empty, and then the first bead that you added on that drop 2, or that pearl rather 2. So you're going to notice they kind of sit funky. They're sitting up. This is going to create that 2-dimensional look. So the seed beads will actually be the front of the design. The pearls there will sit, or sorry, the seed beads will be the back of the design. The pearls will sit to the front. What I want to do now is add my 6mm pearls. And to do so, I need to go back through my first 11-0 in that blue color that I added, through a 4mm pearl, out the top of a 4mm pearl. And this is going to be the first one that you added. Make sure your thread doesn't catch on any of those other pearls. They kind of act as a fringe. And you're going to sew through that 11-0 that sits on the top. Very simple pattern now. We're going to grab one 11-0 in our blue color, one 6mm bead. Then we're going to grab one more of our 11-0 in the blue color. And then we're going to sew over to the next 11-0 that sits on the next open 4mm pearl. It just sits right in the middle there. Blue bead, 6mm, whoops. Ugh, just wants to pop off there. Blue bead, 6mm pearl, which doesn't want to go on my needle. Another blue bead, and then once again go over to that next 11-0 and sew through. That pearl was trying to escape my matrix. Going in here, I have 6 more to add, just going the whole way around the design, adding in the 6mm pearl. Once you're getting ready to add the last of your pearls in, you're going to sew back through that 11-0 seed bead that your thread was currently coming out of the top of the 4mm, and you can see kind of how it's laying when you're looking at it. When you're looking at the front of the design, you'll only see a ring of seed beads. When you're looking at the back of the design, you'll see more seed beads in play. So How we're going to go in and kind of stabilize this and make it that three-dimensional shape, make sure that all your beads are sitting equal distance apart in this matrix, is add some seed beads to the back side of the piece. We are going to take our thread and needle down through, so you're going and coming out the silver bead. You're going to go down through the pearl that sits below it, as well as down through the 11-0 seed bead, that blue one. Bring your thread and needle down towards the bottom there. So through the 11-0 seed bead that is right above that pearl. And then once you're through there, you're going to go over to the point or the V. So I'm going to flip it over, and I want to come out through one of those V's that I created initially. So one of those points. Remember, in the initial design, we did 8 of those group of 3 seed beads. That's what we're going to catch on to on this first side, which is going to be the back of the design. I'm coming out of each of those peaks of those 8 little triangles that I made, and we're going to connect to the silver bead that sits above the 4mm pearl. Go ahead and grab 4 of your 11-0 seed beads. So through the silver bead that would sit to the right of that. Make sure those seed beads, which really wants to get caught on my pliers here, my thread. Make sure those seed beads sit on the side with your seed beads. Add 4 more beads. And once those 4 beads are added, go to the next point and sew through that next silver point bead. See how it creates that little nestle there of seed beads? Once again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to the next silver 11-0 that sits on top of the 4mm bead. Sew through it. And then once again, 4 more of my 11-0 seed beads, and then down to the next top. So there I have 2 done, and I have 6 more to go. What that's going to do is really get that foundation and get that nice shape for us. As you finish up adding in your seed beads, you'll start to notice that the blue seed beads here at the top kind of start to fall towards the front. That silver bead that you're catching on always kind of pulls a little bit towards the back. After going around and putting in all of these V's to stabilize it, you're going to be coming out of that first silver bead that your thread was originally coming out of when you did those nice X's there. And what we're going to do is get back to the front of the piece. So I'm going to go down through the next bead, out through one of the 11-0 seed beads that's right after it. I'm going to take my needle and thread to the front of the project now. So I didn't go through any seed beads, just kind of pushing it through the front. I'm going to bring my thread and needle out through my 11-0 seed bead and my pearl that sit right above that seed bead that my thread is coming out of, through the silver, out through my 11-0 and out through my pearl, and out through the 11-0 after the pearl. From here, we're going to go around and we are going to pick up 1 more of our blue seed beads. We're going to sew the whole way around. So I'm going to go through 11, pearl 11, add that seed bead above, so it sits like it's a peak, and on to the next one. Seed bead goes on, through the pearl, seed bead pearl, that blue one, and again it sits to the peak. So you guessed it, because we started out with a count of 16. We've been doing everything in counts of 8, and we're going to continue with that count of 8. Once we're done here with this 8 count, what we get to do is we get to go around and use some silver seed beads on the exterior of the pearl to make the pendant appear a little bit bigger. You can see I'm just going the whole way through and around, putting that little topper on before we go around and add our seed beads. 2 more to go after this. And then this next one finishes it up. When I come out this last one here, going through the pearl and then the seed bead on the other side, I'm going to kind of lock them in place. Generally speaking, when I get ready to do the next step to lock it in place, I'm going to go through the beads that I just added in, and then I'm going to exit through the seed bead before the pearl. So you're going to be exiting through that blue seed bead. And now what we're going to do is we are going to add the outside of our matrix. So you can see here's the back side, getting that nice kind of sunken pearl look. And then the other side, which we're going for here, is going to accentuate that pearl matrix by adding in some more silver on the exterior. So on the exterior here, coming over the bead, you'll notice that we are going to add an additional 7 beads to the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Once you have those 7 seed beads on, you're going to go over to the opposite side of the pearl. You're going to take your needle and thread through the blue 11s that sit along the top. So 1, 2, 3, out after that blue seed bead. And then once again, 7 more seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Skip over the pearl and go through those 3 blue seed beads that sit at the top. Give a nice tight pull. You can see I generally will pull my needle in front of the pearl. After each time, then, I make sure those seed beads kind of set down, nestled in there as we go around and kind of do that last foundational piece. Once you're finished with your pearl matrix pendant here, you're going to decide how you want the actual pendant to be displayed, whether or not you want to just put on a bail or whether or not you want to continue on and have this design with me as well. I did want to show one more time that it is reversible. You can have it showing on both sides here, but we're going to stick to that matrix side where you can't really even see all the lines back there, but you know they're occurring. I want to come out through one of those top silver lined sapphire beads there. See how my thread's coming out there? And here's where I'm going to build onto my design. I'm going to go in here and add in 3 silver seed beads. Then I'm going to begin with one of my smaller 4mm pearls and create just a little pattern then of my blue bead, my pearl, my blue bead, and my smaller pearl that you can see are going to come right down and create the chain for my pendant. When I get finished my chain, I'm going to show you the wire guard, how I'm going to connect it. But when I come back through, I'm going to center it on that bead, just like we did with the pearls when they were coming out, going in and sewing into the opposite side. So from here then, I'm going to add one of my silver seed beads and then go back to that pattern of my blue 11 pearl 11 pearl, and then just that touch of silver with one silver 11-0 between the design. So I'm going to continue doing this for about 8.5 inches on this side. I'm going to have an 18-inch total necklace. Once you have the length that you're going for, so I have an additional 8 inches here on this side of my pendant, I'm going to use either a wire guard or a soldered ring, and I've completed my pattern with my 3 seed beads just like I started with. I'm going to wrap around that soldered ring once and twice and 3rd time's a charm. Pull that right down next to the piece and next to the design, and then I'm going to sew back through my entire row of beads that I just added. You want to make sure as you're doing this that by accident you don't miss a seed bead or it'll put a weird kink in your necklace portion. So I go back a little bit, pull that tight, make sure that extra thread is not showing a ton here, and back towards the center of the design. I'm just going to reinforce going the whole way back through. Once you're back to the center of the design here, make sure that whichever side your thread is coming out of that 11-0 seed bead, that you are sewing into the opposite side, so that way it maintains a nice straight angle coming out of that seed bead. You're going to sew over 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole arches and come out on the opposite side here and repeat. So going over arch, through my blue beads, arch, through my blue beads, arch, through 1, 2 blue bead, and come on out and create the exact same pattern on the other side. After finishing up the design and having your strands come out the top here, you'll notice that you have 3 along the top and then you have 5 along the bottom. If you so choose with the 5th pearl, you can come down like I'm going to do and drop a little bit more pearls in at the bottom to hang down on this matrix. If not, you can go ahead and stop the design, just tie it off, and your beautiful pearl matrix necklace is finished. It has a nice vintage look to it, or like I said, you can keep it if you want to just as a pendant and use a chain or something in the same regard. What I'm going to do is utilize the thread that I still have on my piece, coming out the end there of adding my second side. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go the whole way down toward the bottom of the piece. Just like I did along the top, I'm going to go the whole way down here, through all the blue beads, along the edges, skipping through the pearl here so I don't have to sew through as many beads. A little cheat. And what I want to do is come out through that top blue bead, just as if we were getting ready to add on our necklace portion. But instead, what we're going to do is add on some pearls there to the bottom. So we're going to come out right there along that bottom. We're going to be connecting to the blue on the opposite side of that bottom pearl. So when you're looking at the design, we're coming out here right along the top. Again, 3 pearls to the top, 5 to the bottom. We're going to add our pearls right here along the base line of the piece. Adding to the bottom before finishing the piece, coming out of that blue bead, I'm going to add 2 blue 11s, followed by 1 silver 11, followed by a 4mm and 1 silver 11. I'm then going to add 1 of my 6mm pearls, 3 4mm pearls, and go back up through that 6mm. That's going to create a little point there. Do the same thing on the opposite side then. 11 pearl, 11, 2 11s, and you're going to sew in to the opposite side of that center 6mm bead to the blue bead that sits there. From here, I'm simply going to take my thread and get rid of it. Go back toward the center of the design where that original thread end is sitting, tie the 2 thread ends together, and finish off this beautiful pearl matrix necklace. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this pearl matrix design. Remember, it's actually a little bit reversible too, that you can do more color on one side and less on the other. You can do the drop, you can do it as earrings, and really have fun with the variations. Don't forget to comment below if you've done any of those variations or used other beads in the design. As always, if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you were inspired, and stay tuned for our next tutorial video.